Elena Martinez had been working as a night nurse at St. Catherine's Hospital for 3 years, but she had never encountered anything like the man who walked through the emergency room doors at exactly midnight. He was tall, imposing, with jet black hair that seemed to absorb the fluorescent lights above. His skin was pale as winter snow, and his eyes held an otherworldly intensity that made her breath catch in her throat. What truly captured her attention, however, was the small child he carried in his arms. The boy couldn't have been more than 4 years old, with golden curls and the most beautiful green eyes Elena had ever seen. The child was unconscious, his small chest rising and falling with labored breaths. "Please," the man said, his voice carrying an accent she couldn't quite place. "He needs help immediately." Elena rushed forward, her professional instincts taking over despite the strange aura that surrounded the mysterious stranger. "What happened to him?" "He has been poisoned," the man replied, his jaw tight with barely controlled emotion. "A rare toxin that affects only those with certain bloodlines." Dr. Sarah Chen, the head of emergency medicine, approached them quickly. She was a no-nonsense physician who had seen everything in her 15 years of practice, but even she seemed momentarily taken aback by the unusual pair. "We'll need to run tests immediately," Dr. Chen said, preparing to take the child. "Are you the father?" The man's eyes darkened, and, for a moment, Elena could have sworn she saw something inhuman flicker across his features. "Yes," he said simply. "I am Marcus Blackwood. This is my son, Gabriel." As they rushed Gabriel into the treatment room, Elena couldn't shake the feeling that there was much more to this story than met the eye. Marcus Blackwood paced the hallway like a caged predator, his movements fluid and precise in a way that seemed almost supernatural. Over the next several hours, Elena found herself inexplicably drawn to both the mysterious father and his unconscious son. She volunteered to stay beyond her shift, helping Dr. Chen run test after test. Each result came back more puzzling than the last. "I've never seen anything like this," Dr. Chen confided to Elena during a brief break. "The toxin in his system, it's not in any of our databases. And his blood work shows some unusual markers that I can't explain." Meanwhile, Marcus remained in the waiting area, never sitting, never eating, never seeming to tire despite the long hours. Occasionally, Elena would catch him staring at her with an intensity that made her heart race for reasons she couldn't understand. It was nearly dawn when Gabriel finally began to stir. Elena was checking his vitals when his green eyes fluttered open, immediately searching the room until they found her face. "Angel," he whispered in a small voice. "Are you my new mommy?" Elena's heart nearly broke at the innocent question. "No, sweetheart. I'm Elena, your nurse. Your daddy is right outside." But, when she looked toward the door, Marcus was nowhere to be seen. It was as if he had simply vanished into thin air. Dr. Chen frowned as she entered the room. "That's strange. Mr. Blackwood was just here a moment ago." Elena spent the rest of her shift caring for Gabriel, who seemed to recover with remarkable speed. The child was intelligent beyond his years, asking thoughtful questions and displaying an unusual maturity for someone so young. But there was also a deep sadness in his eyes that broke Elena's heart. "Where's my daddy?" Gabriel asked as the morning sun streamed through the hospital windows. "I'm sure he'll be back soon," Elena assured him, though she was beginning to have her own doubts. As her shift ended, Elena found herself reluctant to leave Gabriel alone. There was something about the child that called to her maternal instincts, despite having no children of her own. She had lost her own baby 5 years ago in a tragic miscarriage, and had thrown herself into her career to cope with the grief. Just as she was preparing to go home, Marcus appeared in the doorway as silently as he had disappeared. The morning sunlight seemed to make him uncomfortable, and he stayed carefully in the shadows. "How is he?" Marcus asked, his voice filled with genuine concern. "Much better," Elena replied. "The doctors want to keep him for observation, but his recovery has been remarkable." Marcus nodded, then did something that surprised Elena completely. He approached her slowly, his dark eyes holding hers. "I need to ask something of you," he said quietly. "Something that may sound impossible to believe." Elena waited, her heart pounding inexplicably. "Gabriel needs a mother figure in his life," Marcus continued. "Someone who can give him the normal, human experiences that I cannot provide." I don't understand, Elena said, though part of her was beginning to suspect the truth. Marcus glanced around the room, ensuring they were alone, then stepped closer. I am not like other men, Elena Martinez. I am something that most people believe exists only in stories and nightmares. Before Elena could respond, Marcus continued. I am what mortals call a vampire. I have lived for over 3 centuries, ruling over my kind from the shadows of this world. Elena should have laughed. She should have called security or assumed the man was having some sort of mental breakdown. Instead, she found herself staring into his eyes and, somehow knowing, with absolute certainty, that he was telling the truth. Gabriel is my son, Marcus explained. But, his mother, she was human. She died when he was born, and, ever since, I have struggled to raise him between 2 worlds. That's impossible, Elena whispered, though her voice lacked conviction. Is it? Marcus asked. You've seen his blood work. You've witnessed his rapid healing. Tell me, Elena, what does your heart tell you? Elena looked at Gabriel, who was sleeping peacefully in his hospital bed. The child did seem different somehow. Special. And, the way he had looked at her, as if recognizing something in her that she didn't even recognize in herself. Why me? She asked finally. Because, Marcus said softly, you have the heart of a mother, even though fate has not yet blessed you with a child of your own. Gabriel needs someone who can love him unconditionally, someone who can teach him about humanity and compassion. Elena felt tears welling up in her eyes. You want me to take care of your son? I want you to be his mother in every way that matters, Marcus replied. I can provide for his physical needs, ensure his safety, give him power and position in the supernatural world. But, I cannot give him what he needs most, the love and guidance of a woman who understands the human heart. The request was overwhelming, impossible, and completely insane. Elena should have said no. Should have walked away from this strange man and his mysterious child and never looked back. Instead, she found herself nodding slowly. What would this mean, exactly? It would mean leaving your old life behind, Marcus said honestly. It would mean entering a world that exists alongside yours but hidden from mortal eyes. It would mean accepting Gabriel as your own son, loving him and protecting him as fiercely as any mother would. Elena looked at Gabriel again, and the child chose that moment to open his eyes and smile at her. It was a smile of pure trust and hope, and Elena felt something inside her chest crack open, a place that had been sealed shut since her own loss. He would be safe, she asked. With you as his mother and me as his father, he would be the most protected child in both the human and supernatural worlds, Marcus assured her. Elena took a deep breath. The rational part of her mind was screaming that this was madness, that she should run as far and as fast as she could. But, her heart was telling her something entirely different. When would this arrangement begin, she asked. If you are willing, Marcus said, it would begin now. Today. Gabriel would come home with you, and I would provide everything you need to care for him. Elena's mind raced through all the practical considerations. Her apartment, her job, her life as she knew it. But, then, she looked at Gabriel again, and none of those things seemed to matter anymore. I need time to think, she said finally. Marcus nodded. Of course. But, please understand, Gabriel's safety depends on finding someone soon. There are others in my world who would use him against me if they discovered his existence. The weight of that statement settled over Elena like a heavy blanket. This wasn't just about providing love and care for a child. This was about protecting an innocent boy from dangers she couldn't even imagine. Others, she asked. Vampires who would see Gabriel as a weakness, Marcus explained grimly. And humans who would see him as an abomination. He exists between worlds, Elena, and that makes him vulnerable in ways that only someone who truly loves him can understand. Elena spent the rest of the day in a daze, mechanically going through the motions of her normal routine while her mind processed the impossible situation she had been presented with. By evening, she had made her decision. She returned to the hospital to find Marcus sitting beside Gabriel's bed, reading to the boy from an ancient-looking book written in a language she didn't recognize. I'll do it, she said simply. Marcus looked up, and, for the first time since she had met him, Elena saw genuine relief cross his features. "You understand what this means?" he asked. "I understand that this little boy needs someone to love him," Elena replied. "And I understand that I need him just as much as he needs me." Gabriel looked up at her with those bright green eyes. "Does this mean you're going to be my mommy now?" Elena felt her heart break and heal at the same time. "If you want me to be." Gabriel's face lit up with joy, and he reached out his small arms toward her. Elena gathered him into her embrace, and, in that moment, she knew that her life had just changed forever. Marcus watched them for a long moment, and Elena could have sworn she saw something that might have been tears in his ancient eyes. "There is much you will need to learn," he said quietly. "About my world, about Gabriel's true nature, about the dangers that may come." "Then, teach me," Elena said, her voice filled with determination. As the sun set outside the hospital windows, Elena realized that she was about to embark on the most dangerous and extraordinary adventure of her life. She was going to become a mother to a child who was half vampire, half human, and completely dependent on her love to survive. And, somehow, despite all the impossibilities and dangers ahead, it felt like the most natural thing in the world. That night, as they prepared to leave the hospital together, Marcus placed his hand gently on Elena's shoulder. "He is my son," Marcus said quietly, echoing the words that had started this entire incredible journey. "But she is not his mother," he continued, looking at Gabriel with infinite sadness. "You are his mother now, Elena. In every way that truly matters." Elena nodded, understanding the weight of responsibility she was accepting. As they walked out into the darkness together, the vampire king, the human woman, and the extraordinary child who would bind their lives together forever, Elena knew that nothing would ever be the same. But, for the first time in 5 years, since losing her own child, Elena felt complete again. She had found her purpose, her family, and her destiny in the most unlikely of places. The real adventure was just beginning. 3 months had passed since Elena Martinez had made the decision that changed her life forever. She now lived in a sprawling estate on the outskirts of the city, a magnificent property that Marcus had acquired decades ago but had never truly called home until now. The house was a perfect blend of old-world elegance and modern convenience, with high ceilings, elaborate moldings, and windows that could be completely shuttered to block out the daylight when necessary. Elena had quit her job at the hospital, though she told her colleagues that she had received an unexpected inheritance that allowed her to pursue other opportunities. The truth was far more complex. Her new life revolved entirely around Gabriel, and she had never been happier. The little boy had adapted to their arrangement with remarkable ease. He called Elena Mama now, and the pure joy in his voice every time he said the word never failed to bring tears to her eyes. Gabriel was an extraordinary child in every sense of the word. He was incredibly intelligent, displaying a vocabulary and reasoning ability far beyond his 4 years. He could read fluently in 3 languages and had an uncanny ability to sense people's emotions and intentions. But there were also reminders of his supernatural heritage that Elena was still learning to navigate. Gabriel's eyes would sometimes flash with an otherworldly light when he was excited or upset. He was stronger than any normal child his age, requiring Elena to childproof their home in ways most parents never had to consider. And his appetite was unusual. He craved rare meat and had an aversion to certain foods that most children loved. Marcus visited every evening after sunset, spending time with Gabriel and gradually educating Elena about the supernatural world she had entered. These evening visits had become the highlight of Elena's day, though she tried not to examine too closely why the vampire king's presence made her heart race. "Tell me about Gabriel's mother," Elena asked one evening as they sat in the library while Gabriel played with his toys nearby. It was a question that had been burning in her mind for weeks, but she had been afraid to ask. Marcus's expression darkened, and he was quiet for so long that Elena thought he might not answer. Finally, he spoke in a voice heavy with old pain. "Her name was Isabella Crawford," he said quietly. "She was a historian, researching medieval legends for her doctoral dissertation. She stumbled upon evidence of my kind's existence and became obsessed with learning more." Elena watched Gabriel as Marcus spoke, noting how the child's sensitive hearing meant he was listening to every word, even while appearing to be absorbed in his play. "How did you meet her?" Elena asked. "She sought me out," Marcus replied. She was brilliant, fearless, and completely fascinated by the idea that vampires were real. Most humans who discover our existence react with terror or disbelief. Isabella reacted with wonder. Elena could hear the love and loss in Marcus's voice, and she felt a surprising pang of something that might have been jealousy. "You loved her," Elena observed. "I did," Marcus admitted. "More than I had ever loved anyone in my 3 centuries of existence. She made me remember what it felt like to be human, what it meant to hope and dream and plan for a future." "What happened to her?" Elena asked gently. Marcus was quiet for another long moment. "Vampire and human relationships are complicated," he said finally. "Our biology is not compatible in most ways. The fact that Isabella became pregnant at all was considered impossible by those in my world who knew of our relationship." Elena felt a chill run down her spine. The pregnancy was dangerous? From the beginning, Marcus confirmed. Gabriel's dual nature put enormous strain on Isabella's body. She grew weaker as he grew stronger. I wanted to terminate the pregnancy to save her life, but she refused. She said that Gabriel was a miracle, a bridge between our 2 worlds, and that his existence was more important than her own survival. Gabriel had stopped playing and was now listening openly, his green eyes fixed on his father with an intensity that was heartbreaking. "She died giving birth to him," Marcus continued, his voice barely above a whisper. "She held him once, told me to make sure he knew that both sides of his heritage were gifts, not curses, and then she was gone." Elena felt tears streaming down her cheeks. The tragedy of Isabella's death, the weight of responsibility that Marcus had carried alone for 4 years, and the complexity of Gabriel's existence all hit her at once. "Gabriel," Elena called softly. The little boy immediately came to her, crawling into her lap with the instinctive trust he had shown her from the beginning. "Mama, am I the reason my first mommy went to heaven?" Gabriel asked, his voice small and uncertain. Elena's heart broke at the question. She looked at Marcus, who nodded almost imperceptibly, giving her permission to handle this delicate moment. "No, sweetheart," Elena said firmly, holding Gabriel close. "You are not the reason for anything sad. You are the reason for everything beautiful and wonderful that has come since. Your first mommy loved you so much that she wanted to make sure you could come into this world, even though it meant she couldn't stay to watch you grow up. But she knew that your daddy would take care of you, and she knew that somehow, someday, you would find someone else to love you just as much as she did." Gabriel looked up at her with those wise, ancient eyes. "Like you?" "Exactly like me," Elena said, kissing the top of his head. "I love you just as much as any mommy could love her little boy. And Daddy loves us both," Gabriel said with the simple certainty that only children possess. Elena looked at Marcus over Gabriel's head, and something passed between them, an understanding, a recognition of the bond that was forming between them all. Over the following weeks, Elena noticed that her relationship with Marcus was evolving beyond their shared concern for Gabriel. They had begun spending time together after Gabriel went to bed, talking about everything from philosophy to literature to their very different life experiences. Marcus was incredibly well-read, having had centuries to study and observe human nature. Elena found his perspectives fascinating, and she was surprised to discover that her own modern viewpoints seemed to intrigue him just as much. "You have changed our lives in ways I never expected," Marcus told her one evening as they sat together in the garden. Gabriel was asleep upstairs, and the house was peaceful around them. "You've changed mine too," Elena replied honestly. 6 months ago, I was just going through the motions of living. Now I feel like I have a real purpose." "It's more than that," Marcus said, moving closer to her on the garden bench. "You've brought light into this house." Gabriel laughs now in a way he never did before. "And I find myself looking forward to each evening, not just to see my son, but to see you as well." Elena's heart began to race as Marcus reached out to touch her cheek gently. His skin was cool, but his touch sent warmth spreading through her entire body. "Marcus," she whispered, not sure what she wanted to say. "I know this is complicated," he said softly. "I know that what I am makes any relationship between us seem impossible. But I cannot deny what I feel for you, Elena. You are not just Gabriel's mother now. You are becoming essential to my existence in ways I never thought possible." Before Elena could respond, they heard Gabriel calling from upstairs. They separated quickly, both rushing to check on the child. They found Gabriel sitting up in bed, his eyes wide and frightened. "Mama, Daddy, I had a bad dream. There were scary people who wanted to take me away from you." Elena gathered Gabriel into her arms while Marcus sat on the edge of the bed, his expression grave. "Tell us about the dream," Marcus said gently. "There were people with red eyes," Gabriel said, shuddering. "They said I didn't belong with humans. They said I should come with them and learn to be like them." Elena felt Marcus tense beside her, and she knew immediately that this was more than just a child's nightmare. "Gabriel," Marcus said carefully, "have you been having dreams like this before?" Gabriel nodded reluctantly. "Sometimes. But this time felt different. Like they were really trying to talk to me." Marcus stood up abruptly, his entire demeanor changing. "Elena, we need to talk. Now." They left Gabriel with his favorite story playing on a tablet and went downstairs to the library. Marcus closed the door firmly behind them. "What's happening?" Elena asked, though she was afraid she already knew. "Gabriel is developing his telepathic abilities," Marcus explained grimly. "It's something that happens to vampire children around his age. But Gabriel's abilities are manifesting much earlier and much stronger than they should." "The dreams aren't really dreams, are they?" Elena asked. "No," Marcus confirmed. "They're psychic communications. Other vampires are reaching out to Gabriel, trying to influence him, possibly trying to locate him." Elena felt a chill of fear run through her. "Are we in danger?" "Gabriel is in danger," Marcus said. "There are factions in vampire society who believe that hybrids like Gabriel are abominations that should not exist. There are others who believe he could be incredibly powerful and want to use him for their own purposes. And you've been protecting him from all of this," Elena realized. "Trying to," Marcus said. "But his growing abilities make him more visible to my kind every day. It's becoming harder to hide his existence." Elena sat down heavily in one of the leather chairs. "What do we do?" "We have several options," Marcus said, beginning to pace. "We could go into hiding, disappear completely and try to raise Gabriel away from both the human and supernatural worlds." "What else?" "We could seek protection from other supernatural entities who might see value in keeping Gabriel safe. Or..." Elena could tell there was a third option. Marcus stopped pacing and looked directly at her. "Or I could formally claim you as my mate and Gabriel as our legitimate heir. It would give you protection under vampire law and make Gabriel's position unassailable." Elena's breath caught in her throat. "Your mate?" "In vampire society, bonding with a mate is the strongest form of commitment possible," Marcus explained. "It would mean that any threat against you or Gabriel would be considered a direct challenge to my authority as a king." "But I'm human," Elena said weakly. "Which would make the bonding even more powerful," Marcus replied. "It would send a message that I believe in Gabriel's dual nature, that I see strength in the combination of human and vampire rather than weakness." Elena's mind was reeling. The man she had been falling in love with was essentially proposing to her, but for reasons of politics and protection rather than love. "Marcus," she began, but he interrupted her. "I know what you're thinking," he said softly. "That I'm only suggesting this for practical reasons. But, Elena, what I told you earlier was true. You have become essential to me. I love Gabriel's mother, you, not just for what you give to my son, but for what you have brought to my own existence." Elena looked up at him, seeing the vulnerability in his ancient eyes. "You love me?" "I love you," Marcus confirmed. "I love your strength, your compassion, your fierce protection of Gabriel. I love the way you've brought warmth and laughter into our lives. I love the way you see possibilities where I see only problems." Elena stood up and moved toward him. "I love you too," she admitted. "I've been trying not to, because this whole situation seems impossible, but I can't deny it anymore." Marcus reached for her hands. "Then, will you consider it? Not just for Gabriel's protection, but because we love each other and want to build a life together?" Before Elena could answer, they heard Gabriel calling for them again, this time with more urgency in his voice. They rushed upstairs to find Gabriel sitting up in bed, his eyes glowing with an otherworldly light. "Mama, Daddy," he said in a voice that sounded older than his years, "they're coming. Tonight. They want to take me away from you." Marcus immediately went into protective mode. "Elena, pack quickly. Only essentials. We need to leave immediately." "Where will we go?" Elena asked, already moving toward the closet. "Somewhere they can't follow," Marcus replied grimly. "Somewhere I should have taken you both long ago." As Elena packed their belongings with shaking hands, she realized that the choice about bonding with Marcus might be taken out of their hands entirely. Their enemies were closing in, and their little family was about to face its greatest test. Gabriel sat quietly on the bed, watching them prepare to flee, and Elena could see in his young face the weight of understanding that this was his fault, that they were in danger because of what he was. "Gabriel," Elena said firmly, stopping her packing to kneel beside him. "This is not your fault. You are precious and wonderful, and we will protect you no matter what. Do you understand?" Gabriel nodded, throwing his arms around her neck. "I love you, Mama. I love you too, baby. More than anything in this world." As they prepared to leave the only home Gabriel had ever known, Elena realized that her answer to Marcus's proposal was already clear. Whatever came next, they would face it together, as a family. The vampire king, the human woman, and the extraordinary child who had brought them together were about to begin the fight of their lives. And Elena was ready to fight for the love she had found, no matter what enemies they might face in the darkness ahead. The ancient castle stood perched on a cliff overlooking the North Sea, its towers disappearing into the mist that perpetually surrounded the remote Scottish Highlands. Elena had never imagined she would find herself in such a place, much less calling it home. But 3 weeks had passed since their desperate flight from the estate, and the fortress that Marcus called Raven's Hollow had become their sanctuary. "Are you sure we're safe here?" Elena asked as she watched Gabriel play in the vast library, his laughter echoing off the stone walls. "As safe as we can be anywhere," Marcus replied, though his expression remained troubled. "This castle has been in my family for 6 centuries. It's warded against supernatural intrusion and hidden from mortal detection." Elena nodded, but she could see the tension in Marcus's shoulders, the way his eyes constantly moved to the windows as if expecting an attack at any moment. The threat against Gabriel had forced them to accelerate their relationship in ways that would have been unimaginable under normal circumstances. 2 days after their arrival at Raven's Hollow, Marcus had performed the vampire bonding ceremony with Elena. It had been a beautiful but surreal experience, conducted in the castle's chapel by moonlight with only Gabriel as their witness. Elena now wore an ancient ring that marked her as the mate of the vampire king, and she could feel the supernatural protection that surrounded her like an invisible shield. But the bonding had brought unexpected consequences. Elena found that she could now sense Marcus's emotions and thoughts when he allowed it, and she suspected he could do the same with her. More surprisingly, she discovered that she had developed enhanced strength and speed, though nothing approaching Marcus's vampiric abilities. "Mama, look what I can do," Gabriel called from across the library. Elena turned to see Gabriel holding his hand out toward a book on a high shelf. To her amazement, the book began to float down toward him, guided by what could only be telekinetic power. "Gabriel!" Marcus said sharply. "We've talked about this. You must be careful with your abilities." The book dropped safely into Gabriel's hands, and he looked sheepishly at his parents. "I'm sorry, Daddy. But it's getting harder to keep them inside." Elena exchanged a worried glance with Marcus. Gabriel's powers had been growing stronger every day since they arrived at Raven's Hollow, as if the ancient magic of the castle was amplifying his natural abilities. "Come here, sweetheart," Elena said gently. Gabriel ran to her, and she lifted him onto her lap. "Tell me what it feels like when your powers want to come out." Gabriel scrunched up his face in concentration. "Like there's lightning in my tummy, and it wants to jump out through my hands. And sometimes I can hear voices that aren't really there." "What do the voices say?" Marcus asked, his tone carefully neutral. "They want me to come find them," Gabriel replied. They say I'm special, and they can teach me things that Mama and Daddy can't. Elena felt a chill of fear. Despite all their precautions, the other vampires were still trying to reach Gabriel through his developing psychic abilities. That evening, after Gabriel had gone to bed, Elena found Marcus standing on the castle's highest tower, looking out at the stormy sea. The wind whipped his dark hair around his face, and she could feel his anguish through their new bond. "We can't keep running forever," Elena said quietly, joining him at the stone parapet. "I know," Marcus replied. "But I don't know how to protect him without destroying the very thing that makes him special." "What do you mean?" Marcus turned to face her, and Elena could see centuries of pain in his dark eyes. "There are ways to suppress Gabriel's vampire nature, to make him fully human. It would mean he could live a normal life, never have to worry about vampire politics or supernatural threats." Elena's heart clenched. But it would also mean losing everything that makes him who he is. His enhanced abilities, his connection to both worlds, his potential to be something entirely new. "And it would mean losing you." "Me?" Elena asked, confused. "The bonding between us was only possible because of Gabriel," Marcus explained. "He is the bridge that allows a vampire and a human to truly connect. Without his unique nature, our bond would fade, and you would return to being fully human." Elena stared at Marcus in shock. "You never told me that." "Because I hoped we would never have to face that choice," Marcus said. "But our enemies are closing in. They've found ways to penetrate the castle's defenses through Gabriel's growing psychic abilities. Soon, they will be able to locate us physically." As if summoned by their conversation, Gabriel appeared in the doorway leading to the tower, his face pale with fear. "Mama, Daddy," he said urgently, "the bad vampires are here." Before either Elena or Marcus could respond, dark shapes began materializing out of the mist surrounding the castle. Vampires were landing on the tower walls, their red eyes glowing with malevolent intent. "Elena, get Gabriel inside," Marcus commanded, his entire demeanor shifting into that of a warrior king. But it was too late. The attackers moved with supernatural speed, surrounding them before they could retreat. Elena counted at least a dozen vampires, led by a woman with long silver hair and a cruel smile. "Marcus Blackwood," the woman said with mock formality. "You've led us quite a chase." "Seraphina," Marcus replied, his voice filled with disgust. "I should have known you would be behind this. Did you really think you could hide the child forever?" Seraphina asked, her eyes fixed on Gabriel. "He is an abomination, Marcus. A contamination of pure vampire blood that threatens the natural order." "Gabriel is my son," Marcus said firmly, "and under my protection." "Your protection?" Seraphina laughed coldly. "You've bonded with a human woman and hidden away like a coward. You've abdicated your responsibilities to our kind for the sake of this hybrid monster." Elena felt rage flood through her at the woman's words. Without thinking, she stepped forward, placing herself between Seraphina and Gabriel. "He's not a monster," Elena said fiercely. "He's a little boy who deserves to be loved and protected, not hunted and threatened." Seraphina's eyes narrowed as she studied Elena. "And you must be the human who thinks she can be a vampire queen. How amusing." "Leave them out of this, Seraphina," Marcus said coldly. "Your quarrel is with me." "Oh, but that's where you're wrong," Seraphina replied. "The council has voted. The hybrid child is to be brought before them for judgment. His human contamination makes him a threat to vampire purity." "What judgment?" Elena demanded, though she was afraid she already knew. "Execution," Seraphina said with satisfaction. "The child will be destroyed, the human will be eliminated, and Marcus will be stripped of his title for his betrayal of vampire law." Gabriel suddenly stepped out from behind Elena, his young face set with determination that seemed far beyond his years. "I won't let you hurt my mama and daddy," he said, his voice carrying power that made the air around them vibrate. Seraphina laughed. "And what exactly do you think you can do, little hybrid?" Gabriel's eyes began to glow, not with the red light of vampire power, but with a brilliant golden radiance that Elena had never seen before. The wind around them intensified, and she could feel electricity crackling in the air. Gabriel, no, Marcus said urgently. Don't reveal your full power to them. But it was too late. Gabriel raised his hands, and pure energy erupted from his small body. The blast sent several of the attacking vampires flying backward off the tower, their screams echoing in the night air. Seraphina's expression shifted from amusement to shock to avarice. Incredible, she breathed. The child is even more powerful than we suspected. Now you understand why he must be protected, not destroyed, Marcus said, moving to stand beside Gabriel. Protected? Seraphina shook her head. Now I understand why he must be controlled. With power like that, properly trained and directed, he could be the ultimate weapon. Elena realized with horror that they had just made their situation even worse. The vampires no longer wanted to kill Gabriel, they wanted to use him. Run! Marcus shouted to Elena and Gabriel. Get to the chapel. Chaos erupted on the tower as Marcus engaged Seraphina and her remaining followers in battle. Elena grabbed Gabriel's hand and ran for the stairs, but they were cut off by two more vampires emerging from the shadows. Going somewhere, one of them sneered. Elena felt the enhanced strength from her bonding with Marcus surge through her body. Without hesitation, she grabbed a heavy stone decoration from the wall and swung it with all her might. The vampire hadn't been expecting a human to move so fast or hit so hard, and he stumbled backward with a cry of surprise. Mama! Gabriel called out as the second vampire lunged toward them. Gabriel's power erupted again, but this time it was controlled, focused. Golden light surrounded the attacking vampire, and Elena watched in amazement as the creature was simply frozen in place, unable to move. How did you do that? Elena gasped as they ran down the spiral staircase. I don't know, Gabriel replied, his small face scrunched with concentration. I just wanted him to stop trying to hurt us. They reached the chapel just as Marcus appeared at the top of the stairs, blood streaming from several wounds but very much alive. The ancient protections will hold them for a while, Marcus said as he barred the chapel door. But not for long. Elena looked around the stone chapel, wondering how long a while might be. What do we do now? Marcus moved to an ornate altar at the front of the chapel. There is one option left, he said grimly. A ritual that was written into the original vampire laws, designed for situations exactly like this. What kind of ritual? Elena asked, though she wasn't sure she wanted to know. Trial by combat, Marcus explained. I can invoke my right as a vampire king to settle this matter through single combat with Seraphina. If I win, she and her followers must accept Gabriel's right to exist and leave us alone forever. And if you lose? Elena asked quietly. Then, Gabriel and I die, and you return to your human life with no memory of any of this. Elena felt her heart stop. No. There has to be another way. There isn't, Marcus said simply. It's our only chance. Gabriel tugged on Elena's hand. Mama, I don't want Daddy to fight the bad lady. Elena knelt down to Gabriel's level. Neither do I, sweetheart. But sometimes grown-ups have to do scary things to protect the people they love. Like when you decided to be my mama even though it was scary? Gabriel asked. Elena felt tears welling up in her eyes. Exactly like that. Marcus knelt beside them. Gabriel, I need you to promise me something. No matter what happens out there, you stay here with Mama. Don't use your powers, don't try to help. Can you promise me that? Gabriel looked between his parents with those wise green eyes. I promise, Daddy. But, you have to promise to come back to us. Marcus gathered both Gabriel and Elena into his arms. I promise to fight with everything I have to come back to my family. As Marcus prepared to leave the chapel to face Seraphina in combat, Elena grabbed his arm. I love you, she said fiercely. All of you. Your strength, your gentleness with Gabriel, your willingness to sacrifice everything for us. Come back to us, Marcus. We need you. Marcus kissed her deeply, pouring all his love and desperation into that single moment. I love you both more than my own existence, he whispered against her lips. You are my heart, Elena.
You and Gabriel are everything that matters to me.
As Marcus walked out of the chapel to face an enemy who had centuries more combat experience, Elena felt their bond pulling tight between them. She could feel his determination, his love, and his fear. Gabriel slipped his small hand into hers.
Mama, Daddy's going to win, isn't he?
Elena looked down at the little boy who had changed her life in every possible way. The child who was half vampire and half human, who had brought together two impossible worlds through the simple power of love.
Yes, sweetheart, Elena said with conviction she didn't entirely feel. Daddy's going to win. Because he's not just fighting for vampire honor or supernatural law.
He's fighting for love, and love always wins in the end.
From outside the chapel, they could hear the sound of battle beginning.
Elena held Gabriel close and prayed to whatever powers might be listening that the impossible love that had brought them all together would be strong enough to see them through the darkness ahead. The vampire king was fighting for his family, his human mate was holding their supernatural child, and, somewhere in the storm-lashed Scottish Highlands, the fate of all supernatural law was being decided by the power of a love that should have been impossible but had proven to be stronger than anything the vampire world could throw against it. As the sounds of combat raged outside, Elena finally understood what Marcus had meant when he said Gabriel was a bridge between worlds. He wasn't just half vampire and half human. He was proof that love could transcend any boundary, overcome any obstacle, and create families that defied every natural law. And Elena knew, with absolute certainty, that no matter what happened in the battle outside, that love would endure. Because some bonds are stronger than death, some families are chosen rather than born, and some children are born to change the world simply by existing.
Gabriel was all of those things, and, more importantly, he was theirs. Forever.
Hours later, as dawn broke over Ravenshollow Castle, Marcus returned to the chapel, battered but victorious. Seraphina had been defeated, her followers scattered, and the Vampire Council had been forced to recognize Gabriel's right to exist as he was, a bridge between worlds, protected by love stronger than law.
It's over? Elena asked, hardly daring to believe it.
It's over, Marcus confirmed, gathering his family into his arms.
We're safe. All of us. Gabriel looked up at his parents with those extraordinary green eyes. Does this mean we can go home now?
Elena and Marcus exchanged a look filled with understanding. Home wasn't the estate they had fled from, or even the castle that had sheltered them. Home was this, the three of them together, whatever challenges the future might bring. We are home, sweetheart, Elena said softly.
Wherever we're together, we're home. And, in that moment, as the Vampire King held his human mate and their extraordinary son in the growing light of dawn, Elena knew that love really could conquer anything, even the impossible.